There is a knight, there is a bishop, and there is a queen. Black has a lead in development. Capablanca plays the move d4. His opponent plays knight f6. And after a few moves, we reach this position. Right away, Capablanca starts the fight for the important d6 square with the move knight to b5. We call this a weak square in chess. Any square that cannot be protected by pawns is a weak square. And d6 is a prime example of that, because black doesn't have a c7 pawn to cover it or the e7 pawn to cover it, which means if black were to cover this square, they would have to do it with their pieces, not pawns. Whereas if you see all these other squares, this pawn is covering them. Let's say if this square ever becomes weak, black can always push this pawn and take control of it. Whereas black cannot do that for this d6 square here. Black plays bishop b4, developing a piece, pinning this knight, and white brings one more piece to take control of the square. Now there is a knight, there is a bishop, and there is a queen that is keeping an eye on this square. Black short castles, gets their king away. The advantage for black here is black has a lead in development. Their king is safe, their pieces are out, and at the same time white still hasn't developed this piece. Their king is still in the middle of the board, and black is hoping he can use that advantage to punish white for ignoring their development and going all out for taking control of the d6 square. But Capablanca is like, he wants to control the square, so he plays the move bishop d6. Okay, Capablanca is firm on controlling the d6 square. Black takes back and knight takes. Now black starts to fight for the control of the d6 square by playing the move knight e8. This knight challenges white's one. If Capablanca captures, black is simply going to capture. Black is very quickly going to develop his pieces. For example, they can quickly play d6 to cover up this weakness. Instead, after knight e8, Capablanca plays the move e4, because Capablanca knows he cannot afford to fall behind in development. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to keep protecting this knight. Now in this position, black had to play the move queen b6. And the reason for that is black wants to create counterplay and punish white for not developing his pieces. So for example, if white plays queen d2, they lose the knight and they lose the game here. Okay, the b2 rook and this knight is attacked. The game is lost. So white has to somehow defend this pawn, not with the queen. He has to keep the queen guarding here with the rook. But then black plays the move knight d4, cutting off this queen from protecting this d6 knight. So what does white do? White has to capture, then black can capture back, and now this is an equal position. White can play bishop e2, black will play d6. Notice how this knight is very nicely placed in the center of the board, and overall it's a very nice, very pleasant position to play for both sides. But in the game, black didn't play this. Black didn't play the move queen b6, and after e4, he took knight into d6. White is left with only one obvious move, taking back the knight, and black challenged the white queen with queen e7. Once again, if this queen moves, black can play d6 and take control of this square. But Capablanca doesn't want to give up control of that square. So he plays the move long castle. Now with the rook supporting the queen, it is white who's still keeping control of the d6 square. Black tries to create counterplay on the king side with the move f5. White plays the move f3, simply guarding this pawn. Black captures, rook captures. White is still in firm control of this square. Now notice, black's bishop, how will it come into the game? If this pawn doesn't move, this bishop is just going to be not going to come into the game. So black decides he needs to get this bishop into the game and plays the move b6. White continues his development. Black knows he wants to play bishop b7. But if he plays bishop b7, he'll lose the pawn. So he plays knight e5 first. Now this knight guards this pawn. White continues rook hd1, getting an extra piece to keep an eye on the d6 square and at the same time watch this pawn. Black plays the move f4. Now if you take into account the position, white is in firm control of the square. So how should you proceed from here on? With the firm control of the square of d6, Capablanca decides it's time to gain more space on the queen side. And he plays the move b4. With more space on the queen side, it is going to be easier for his pieces to maneuver, and at the same time more space also means the opponent will have less space to play with on the queen side. Black played the move bishop a6. Capablanca simply pushes the pawn b5, asking this bishop what it is doing. The bishop drops back. Ideally, Capablanca would love to play something like a4, and he would start some preparation along the queen side. But here, if you play the move a4, you could end up in big trouble after rook c8. Okay, with the rook and knight eyeing the c4 pawn. So Capablanca decides to play the move king b2 first, so that after rook c8, the king comes to b3 and this king and bishop keep this pawn protected. Black plays rook f6, trying to get some counterplay on the king side. Capablanca now keeps pushing the pawns on the queen side. And Capablanca was a master of exploiting extra space advantage. And you'll soon see how he does that. Rook h6. Trying to hit this pawn, Capablanca simply defends it. Now notice that if you play rook g6, attacking this pawn, the white bishop simply drops back and protects this g2 pawn. It doesn't do anything for black. So black played rook f8. Now already black is kind of running out of options. He simply doesn't know how he can create counterplay on any side of the board. White, meanwhile, continues to play with his pawns and plays the move a5. This white pawn is basically knocking on black's queen side. B into a5 happens. This pawn is 4 squares away from promotion. This pawn is 3 squares away from promotion. So what Capablanca decides is, he decides to sacrifice an exchange. And after knight d7, rook d7, these two pawns become a very, very dangerous force. With the support of all these pieces, it's going to be very hard for black to stop them. Black plays the move rook b8, guarding this bishop. White simply continues to push the pawn. Black plays rook f6 and white plays the move bishop c4. You don't want to play c6, otherwise you'll lose this pawn. This pawn is pinned along this file. So bishop c4 was played in the game. Black plays the move a6, hitting at this pawn, and white pushes the pawn b6. Now there is no black pawn that can stop either of them. They are going to keep marching forward. Bishop c8 happened, attacking the rook. White simply moves it. Rook f7. Now once again white eliminates another defender with the move rook to c8. And after rook to c8 there comes bishop e6, pinning this rook and also attacking it. On the next move, white is going to gain the rook, but most importantly, he has made sure that his pawns face lesser obstacles when it comes to promotion. Black played the move rook b8. White goes bishop into f7, gobbling the rook, king into f7, and the knight jumps towards the center of the board. Now this knight protects this pawn, which means this pawn is ready to march forward and they are going to become a queen. Seeing this, black resigned in the game and Capablanca won a very nice game. If you've watched the video till here, don't forget to smash that like button for Jose Raul Capablanca. Subscribe to my channel for more such instructive content. If you have liked this endgame played by Capablanca, you'll also like this game where he completely destroys the Vienna Gambit. Go check it out.